And welcome to Habs Unfiltered, episode 422. I'm your host, Blain Putvin. I'm joined now by my effervescent co-host, Trege Wilson.
Good day, good day.
See how bubbly he is? All happy and bubbly.
Yeah, that's it. My last day of vacation, and I'm sailing for 4 months and Friday. I'm
Can't
so
wait.
happy.
Yay. All expenses paid cruise, though. 0 stars.
No, but we're going good places like down south, South America, Antarctica.
Ooh, the ice
Yeah,
wall.
yeah. I'm gonna find out what's on the other side. Gonna pee off the edge and pee over the flat world.
That's where cats are from. That's why they keep pushing stuff off the edge.
They disguise themselves as penguins. Penguins aren't real.
No,
Just
those are
cats
just
in
cats in an
disguise.
outfit. Yeah. All right. Well, so Matt sends his regards. Unfortunately, he couldn't meet today just because he's flying back to Ontario from spending time out in the Maritimes. And I just want to make note that he never came to see me or told me where he was going to be, so I can go see him. I'm thinking that we broke up.
He didn't even visit me when I was in the hospital earlier this month. So yeah,
Yeah, right.
so I don't know. I don't know what's up Matt's ass, but whatever.
Air Force.
They're too good for everyone.
That's right. Uh,
But if my name was Goose, he would have been right there.
so he's the Iceman.
He's something.
Something. All right. So, what for this one we're gonna go through a few things. We're gonna talk a bit about the Canadiens' road trip, some points in there, but also the World Juniors. So, why don't we just start with the Canadiens first and talk about that 5 game road trip where they went 4-1.
I think they should have been 5-0. I was really disappointed in the Chicago game. I thought they played a great game, but it's just not a team you should be losing to, especially when you dominated the last three teams, and they were top 10 teams in the league or top 15 teams in the league, Tampa Bay. So, yeah, I was kind of disappointed. Like, I was like, how are you losing this team? Um,
They
but I
beat the
guess it's
last
the way it
five
should have.
Stanley Cup champions.
Well, yeah, and then they come back the next night, and you think, okay, it's a back-to-back nights, the game you should be winning, right? And I believe that's why they put Monty in because they thought, okay, let's get our 2 points in this game. You know what I mean? Like the Colorado as uh, Brian puts it, Colorado. It's one of those circled losses. Like, okay, they should win this game. They might win this game. Oh, this one should be a loss. Colorado's here. We're here. Um, and so I see a lot of people said, oh, Dobes should have started the Chicago game. But I think Martin St. Louis wanted to see what he had. This is two top teams he played against, and I mean we're going to get into him later, and he dominated both games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but how can you argue with a 4-1 road trip against against four out of the five teams being the top teams in the league?
Not to
Vegas
mention,
being the
as I
best
said,
team in the league.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and it wasn't like it was, the other team was sucking ass and they gave away the game. In all four of the games that they won against those top teams, by the way, the last five Stanley Cup champions were those four
Mhm.
teams. They're all really strong teams, and they all came out playing pretty good hockey. And
Mhm.
the Canadiens weathered the storm, and they outplayed them. Each game, they outplayed the opponent.
They
The
even outplayed
exception,
Chicago, but
they did outplay Chicago
well,
possession wise.
they outshot Chicago, but
Well, they were like 51% possession or something with
yeah,
Chicago.
yeah.
The issue, though, and I had this argument with somebody online. I don't want to direct anybody towards them because they were being honest and their points were valid. Montreal did get 40 shots on net, like you said. The thing is, uh, In that game, they gave up 12 high danger chances against Chicago. Against the other four teams, the four they won, they gave up less than 8 per game.
Mm,
In the one against Colorado, I think they only gave up 4. A little bit of
yeah,
difference there.
yeah. I, it's like the old adjective: you play to the competition, and
Yeah.
they played a bit harder. It seemed like they played harder against the harder teams, and then they kind of let back a bit against Chicago. They got behind, and they just couldn't catch back up. Uh,
Yeah. And it was the first game after the new year, kind of thing. And I don't know.
excuses, Chicago's like, anyway. I'm just, I'm not going to argue about losing one game in a 5 game road trip, especially this one. This is probably
No.
the best road trip they've had in 3 years.
If you looked at this schedule, this part of the schedule prior to December, and we were looking ahead, and this is one of those, as we call them, the make or break road trips. We all thought that this would be one of those ones where if they got a couple of points, maybe 2 wins, that'd be amazing. But they came out of it 4-1. Nobody expected them to have that kind of record, and to win the 4 games against the best teams in that road trip is even more impressive. So
Mm.
now they come home. They're 1 point out of a playoff spot. Granted, Ottawa's got a game in hand as well, but they're still just 1 point out after that road trip when nobody expected them to be anywhere close. I mean, this is what when they were talking about in the mix, this is what they were talking about.
Well, and this is kind of funny because all season long people were going on, especially right up to Christmas. Oh, this team's worse than they were last year. They're falling behind, but they were never more than 7 points out of a playoff spot. Um,
No,
it's
but they
not
did
that
start off the season playing pretty
they
poor
did.
hockey.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
not saying they weren't playing bad, but they were never more than 5 points away from last in the league either. The point I'm making is
exactly.
if this is the year you're going to have a slow start, this is the not a bad year for a team to have a slow start because between the first wild card team and bottom place in the division, there's not much separation. So you get
No,
3, 4 wins, or you win 4 out of 5 on a road trip, you're going to go from being 5 points out of last place to right in the playoff mix and, being 8 or 9 or 10 points out of last place or whatever they are right now. I'd have to look it up, but,
I think it's
um,
10. I think they're
and
closer to 10 points out.
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I can see the naysayers like, oh, another bottom 5 finish, another one of this, another one of that. But you could see just before Christmas there, things starting to turn around for them. Uh,
Yeah.
Line A gets back and the team raised up a little bit. Evans' play has been helping. It's propelling the team forward. Heineman has been, there's certain players. Line A comes in and he made the team, and we've talked about this before, a little bit more balanced. They went from a one line team to almost a 2.5 line team because the Evans Anderson Gallagher line is still a dangerous line. Um,
Yeah.
and then shorthanded, now you got to worry about Evans, scoring shorthanded, and you got to worry, about all this. And then you have Heineman, who's on that fourth line, and he's
Who's
on
third in
pace.
scoring in rookies?
Yeah, he's on pace for 22 goals.
Yeah.
So with no power, well, actually, he does have power play time now. He's on the second power play, but because he scored a power play
No.
goal the other night. But now, yes, now he is because Liney's out of the lineup, and
Mm-hmm.
Doc has been moved up to the first line. So, having said that, when you have a balanced team where you can rely on almost all 4 lines, now I'm not saying these 4 lines can match up with well, I guess I can say they can match up with the Vegas Golden Knights because they just beat them. But my point is, on a regular basis, you can't look at them and look at, say, the top teams like Vegas and Florida and that and
No.
say, okay,
They're on
these
par.
teams are even.
Yeah.
No, because they're not. And I'm not trying to say they are, but you can see how it's pushing the Montreal to be more successful because now you're not just relying on Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slavkovsky, right?
And
So
Plekanec.
and mechanics and
Brian Savage.
Michael Ryder and Brian Savage. So
No, but I mean, you're right. The fact that for the first time in his entire tenure, for St. Louis' tenure, they were a fully healthy roster in the middle of December of this season. So in his
yeah.
third year, the first day he actually had a healthy roster, and this is the kind of team it looks like. But it's not just that. That Alexander Carrier trade is paying dividends. He
Oh,
solidifies the blue line in the same way Liney does the forwards.
he. I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot about it. But I think that was one of the best trades Kent Hughes ever made. Now, people will argue, oh, he only made that move because it was a bad trade with Colorado. But that
No,
trade with Colorado, you got you Michael Haig. So, I mean, if you really think about it, you didn't, you weren't, Lehkonen was not going to stay. You're going to lose Lehkonen for nothing because someone was going to pay more to Lehkonen than Montreal was willing to do. And
well,
so,
yeah,
yes, you took a first round defenseman who had potential. Let's be
still
honest.
does.
He still does, although from what I read, he's having kind of troubles in Columbus right now. Um,
He tends to
but
take a
he's,
long time to get used to new situations. I still think he's going to end up being a second pairing D man in a couple of years.
I think it's a confidence thing right now for him.
Yes,
He wasn't playing well in Montreal. Then he gets traded, which on a young player is like, okay, they traded me because I wasn't playing well. Then you start overthinking, you start overplaying, you're holding your stick too tight, as the old adjectives go, and your game suffers for it. But bringing Carrier over, even for a small defenseman, offensively, he's like a Kovacevic 2.0 because he's better. Uh,
yeah, yeah. He's
Kovacevic
quicker.
last year was very dependable. Now, I'm not saying he was a top defenseman, but he was dependable. You could put him on the ice in any situation, and you didn't have to worry about him.
Yeah.
Carrier's the exact same way. Only he's a faster, he's a better puck mover, and I think he's better offensively and defensively. I think he's better than Kovacevic overall, but he gives that same, I want to say, coach's mentality where when you know he's on the ice, you're not worried about his
No
game. You're not
worries.
worried about him. If he screws up, you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. You know what I mean? Because he's
Yeah.
pretty basic, and I love him. He really, and I'm going to add on to this Arbor Jackeye and how he changed his game from the first of the season to now, especially paired now with Carrier. He's become a very solidified defenseman that you can count on that's making very few mistakes in his own end or with the puck.
Well, having Carrier there now means that Gooley can go back to the left side where he is more
Yeah.
suited because he's a left-handed. He's more comfortable there. Sure, he can play both, but he is better on the left. So by pushing him back to where he is more uh, impactful, you help your blue line. And you mentioned Jack Eye's improved play. He's put into the right chair. He's on that third pairing. Gooley's on a second pair. Hudson is teamed up with Matheson, and that pairing's doing okay. So everybody's kind of where they should be. So just like with Line A in the lineup, um, everybody's where they should be or where they're better suited
Correct.
at that point in time. And on the Kovacevic thing, I know people are going to be saying, well, why did they trade him in the first place if this is what they always needed? Well, in the summer, they had a little bit more faith in a couple of the younger guys stepping up. But then you had one get injured pretty badly. Another one just couldn't quite step up, and Barron never found his footing. So you go and
I
get
think they
yourself a
ex-
veteran.
I think they expected Barron to be the Kovacevic going into the next season
Yes.
with
Yes.
Mayu being the backup. So if Barron doesn't work out, we have Mayu. Problem with Mayu is I'll be honest, offensively Mayu can stay in the NHL. Defensively, Mayu cannot stay in the NHL, and that's why he's not there.
I think
Um,
he could have, but there was more to it. Like he wasn't going to be able to be a second pairing D man with the way he was playing.
I okay, let me rephrase what I said. I agree. I think he could have
Yeah.
been, but they want him to be a better two-way player.
Yes.
They don't want to develop that two-way play in the NHL, so they put him back down to Laval and said, "Okay, yep, you can play in the NHL, but we
Yeah.
want you to be more than a, I don't know, a Carlson.
Only
I'm
tall.
throwing shade. I'm throwing shade at Carlson. But we want you to be more than just or Gustafson. We want you to be more than Gustafson. We want you to be more than just a defenseman we put out there for offense, right?
Exactly.
So we're going to put you down. You're going to learn that. Now, if you look at Mayu and Laval, he's kind of backed off offensively a bit, but a
Well, I
lot
mean,
of
he
it
was
has to
putting up
do.
4 points a night to start. So yeah, he's going to back down from that for sure.
But also a lot of it has to do with him working more on his defensive play than his
Exactly.
offensive play, and they have the right coach down there to help him with that with Vincent. So um, I have no worries about Mayu. I'm glad he's in the AHL. I'd rather him learn the two-way game than come up and be a one-trick pony in the NHL, which is what he would have been.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so again, the key word to the Montreal success is balance.
Yes. And granted, they're still working on adding to that depth to balance
Mhm.
everything out. But taking a step forward this season is what they were hoping to do so that they can improve the players they have in the system now. You can't just keep saying, hey, let's finish last, let's finish last, let's finish last. And then, okay, we were last for 5 straight years. Bam. Now we're a Stanley Cup contender. No, there's steps that have to be taken, and they need to take a step forward. And this year being in the mix, trademark, um, is the step they need this year. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but they're not going to be far.
I don't think they'll make the playoffs either. Now, I mean, we can segue into whether or not they're going to be buyers or sellers if you want, or we can go into one of the other ones.
We can
But
talk about Dobes and then work into the
okay,
sellers.
so Dobes on October 19th of 2024, a certain Montreal Canadiens fan slash writer for the Hockey Writers slash podcaster said, "I think it's
Who's
time
that?
to take a chance on Dobes." And everyone said,
Friend of the
"Oh
show,
no!" A
Jakub
very
Dobes.
good friend of the show. That's a friend of the show, Dobes. He was on the show. Um, but the reason I said that was because from what I saw of him in Laval last year, from
Yeah.
what I saw with him in the NCAA, and what I saw of him this year in Laval, I thought he was better than Primo. He was playing better than He played better than Primo did in Laval. Primo wasn't stopping a beach ball in the NHL. Let's be honest. Even the games he won, he didn't look good, right? He, I mean, I'm not bashing Primo. I'm not bashing. I'm just being honest with. He did not look good in any game he
He
played. He
wasn't
did not
ready.
have a qual. He never had a quality start, right? And I'm sorry, but when when your coach loses that much confidence in your backup goaltender that you're playing your guy 10 straight games, including a back to back, they're done, right? Um, so then they brought Dobish up, and by no means did I think he'd have the start he had. Um, and he dominated both Florida and Colorado. It's not like he had an easy game in any of them. Granted, again, as we mentioned before, the high definition chances were in the
Lower.
single digits for both games, but he made some pretty big saves in both games.
He did.
Um, and then in the shootout there against Colorado, he blanked everything that came at him. So, yeah. Now, do I think Dobas should stay up for the full year? Let's see the next couple games. Let's see how he
Only
does
if
the
he
next
gets
couple
regular
games.
time. He needs
Correct.
regular time.
Yeah. So I think I would take a flyer on him against Vancouver and on Monday night. Why not? He just played two great games. It gives Monty a little bit of an extra rest.
Give him a
Monty
home
looked
game.
Monty looked okay in Chicago. He didn't look great in Chicago. Um, I'm not going to bash Monty. I think he's having a great year in net. Don't get me wrong. He's proven he's a 1B goaltender. I still don't think he's a solidified starter, but um, give him a try. But you're absolutely right. If he's only going to play once every 2 or 3 weeks,
I don't know.
then send him down and get him the minutes. Bring Primo back up. Um,
Because that's what I
but I
think
mean,
caused Primo to have those issues is that he didn't get enough games.
But and then there's the other problem. If he can't play well because he's not getting enough games, do you bring Primo up or do you go out and find yourself a veteran backup goaltender
No, the chicken came first.
to sit on the bench? Like, is he going to be the Stefan Fissé of the Montreal Canadiens, who's only going to get 2 games in for the entire year? Or
Exactly.
look at me pulling out all these old goalie names. That the Ron Tugnutt who only got 9 games in the year he came to Montreal.
I'll forget Jeff Hackett,
Mm, yeah, but Jack
but he was
Hammett
a
played
starter.
40 some odd games. He was a starter. He played 40 some
Yeah.
odd games one year um, when they realized Tebow wasn't going to be the man.
Um, Um,
But
yeah, but I think with Dobes, they've got something there and they wanted to have him play those tougher teams to see what he has.
mm.
So I think this has just improved his standing a little bit. Give him a home game, and then yeah, if you're not playing him much, or you're not planning on playing a backup very much the rest of the way, just send him back down, let him be the starter, and win a Calder Cup or something.
But if he can win, or if he can play a game a week or a game every 6 days,
Yeah, yeah,
sure,
yeah,
keep him up there. And like I say, I'm glad that they put him in against Colorado because they can say, can we trust this guy? Like, okay, we'll put him against the worst team. If he wins, did he win because he won us the game, or did we
yeah.
win because it was the worst team in the league? Right.
He won the
Uh,
game.
and and if you're looking at Dobish to be a possible 1B, 1A goaltender with future goaltender Jacob Fowler, um, well, yeah. Well, I want to see what this guy can do against top teams. I don't want to see what he does against scrubs, right? And he's so far passing the test. So far, let's not
Yeah,
get ahead of ourselves. We
two
all know
games.
Primo had a pretty good first 2 games in his career as well. Look how that ended up. So they
So
weren't
this brings
as
us to the
good,
point.
but they were good.
This brings us to whether they'll be sellers or buyers.
I I think they'll still be sellers. I just don't think they're just going to sell to sell, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think they really need any more draft picks or prospects. I think if they're going to sell, it's going to be for an NHL ready player to fill a gap, maybe in the bottom 6, or I don't know. It's hard to say because you have Jake Evans who could probably fetch a first round pick if you trade him right now.
Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe. You have David Savard who could probably fetch a first round pick just because he's a playoff type defender that everyone if Ben Sherratt can get your first round pick, David Savard can get your first round
At
pick.
least a second.
Jake get at least a second. Jake, say with Jake Evans, at least a second for Jake Evans.
Yeah.
Uh, dare I say they trade off Mike Matheson now that they know that Lane Hudson can.
It opens the
So
door.
it opens the door, but to do trade off Matheson, you got to make sure Mayu or somebody else in AHL can come up and take the spot. So that's where you're. I know a lot of people want Matheson gone because they got Hudson now. But what's wrong with Hudson? He got the Hudson's on power play 1 now. Matheson's not stepping in his way. What's the issue here? Right? Why not have both until Matheson's worth more in his last year? So
Well, and that's the thing. Like you need somebody to stay there and play those heavy minutes. I understand the Savard being more
I do.
available now because you have
Yeah.
Carrier in place, and if he is moved, you still have guys like Struble who could step up into a bottom pair. You're not really damaging your top four or taking a giant step back. Um, although losing his leadership, I think, would hurt a little bit. So if you're moving him, it is only to give him the opportunity to win. I think they want to keep him as an own rental, to be honest.
And I don't have an issue with that either. But that's why I say I think they're sellers, but they're only going to sell if it's going to improve the team in some way in the
Or
near
open up
future
a yeah,
and
open up a
not
spot for someone else.
yeah, and not the far future. Like before, their trades were for the next 5 years. Now their trade's going to be okay. We're in the
Next
mix.
year.
The next step is the playoffs. Not a contender, but the next
Yeah.
step's making the playoffs. So what do we need to help us make the playoffs next year, right? Now they don't want to lose anybody for nothing either. So
No, so I think
that's
the
what you got to look
Canadians
at.
are kind of one of those. They're in that nebulous region. They are going to sell, but guys like Armia and Dvorak are going to be the guys they sell off. So nothing
Correct.
that'll
Yeah.
be too impactful for them. I think they're going to be guys that they want to do own rentals. So it's kind of like being buyers, like
Yeah.
Evans and Savard. But I think they want to be buyers, outright buyers. So I think they're willing to package together first round picks, prospects, an NHL roster player if it gets them that big step forward.
But here's my question, and I'm going to throw it out there. With Line A in another year, Demidov coming over next year, who's that big guy that's going to move him forward? That like where is he going to play? We have to assume Demidov is probably going to start on the third line and work his way up, but
No,
he'll be slated for top six. He's the guy you want in top six, unless you wait for Line A to be gone and he just moves up into the Line A spot. Um, but Line A's only 26. You could sign Line A long term and he still fits into your window.
he's still signed
So
for next year, so we still have to
right,
look at that next year.
right. So I guess my question, I see what you're saying, and I
Yeah, yeah.
agree. I agree, but who's this guy they're going to get to move it? To me, I think it's a top four right-handed defenseman, personally. Uh,
I think while that I do agree that would be something that would help. I think it's the second line center. I don't know if they
okay.
want to keep going with the Doc experiment. I mean, granted, he's looked very good the last couple of weeks. I think he's starting to come
Yeah.
back to it. But by summertime, if he hasn't really, I think they're open. I think they're going to be open to making a real big move to get that guaranteed second line center because Hage is still a few years away. Um, Beck
Beck's more of a
Beck,
third three
while he
C.
has that high end, he's
He's a
still a
three
couple
C.
years from reaching that. Like they want to make that step forward now. That's what they need to do.
I see Beck as that better Evans. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
as a
Like
third line
I
center.
see
Yeah,
third line center that'll kill penalties. You can throw him on the power play and he won't hurt you, and he's probably going to score you 20 goals.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Um,
when you have him on a third line, you have people like Demidov or whoever's there with him, or whatever else is on that third line. Heineman would be a great third line.
I almost see Waugh being trade bait, to be honest with you. I almost see Waugh now with Demidov,
Yeah,
Heineman showing that and this is nothing against Waugh. I'm a huge Waugh fan. Um, but again, where's Waugh going to fit in? You know what I mean?
there's
Like you
only so many
gotta,
spots.
there's only so many spots, and you're not going to bury Waugh on a fourth line because that's going to be your Tucks and your Jack Eyes and your
And
um,
whoever else.
guys like that. So you know your top six is already solidified. I can see
Yeah,
Newhook maybe dropping out. I can see Anderson maybe moving on. Uh,
I think those guys will be the trade bait to open up the spot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's kind of they're like buying sellers almost. It's like they're kind of in that little we're not good enough to make the playoffs, so we're going to sell pieces, but we're not far away from the playoffs where we want to sell everything, right? So,
Because I want to give those young guys the experience.
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be an interesting
Makes it more fun.
trade deadline and an off season, really, because they're going to have a
Yeah.
whole ton of money this off season as well.
Especially with the cap supposedly rising by 4, maybe even 8 million. We're not sure yet.
Yeah. Harry
So
Price on his final years next. Is it next year? His final year?
next
Is it
year.
this
Yeah.
next year? And so some team might be like, "Hey, we want to reach the bottom, but we'll take his
Even if they
contract."
don't.
Or even if
Even
they
if they
don't, it
don't.
doesn't really matter. Yeah,
But all right. So we're in agreement that they can do anything they freaking well want, and it fits within what they're doing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I
we have
say
about
trade
10 minutes.
everyone to finish last
Yay.
and get that number one pick.
Yeah. All right. So we got about 10 minutes left. And I
All
said
right.
we talked about the World Juniors. So why don't we just kick off Dead horse. Let's beat the shit out of that. Canada finishing fifth again after losing the
I
Czechs again.
As soon as they lost to Latvia, I didn't think they'd medal. I'm
I had a
sorry,
hard
but
time believing them to be a medal, like a gold medal contender. I thought they might outside chance win a bronze.
I as soon as the team was announced and I saw the names that were left off the team, like Seniak and Paraka and Yakim, is it Yamachuk,
Yakimchuk, who
and
scored 30 goals
Yakimchuk
last year.
and Hage
Perek
and
scored 100
yeah,
points.
that who's that guy that's he's 2 points per game in the CHL that they left off
Misa,
Misa,
Seneca,
uh, you know,
Crystal.
Crystal, like the names they left off and the names you have now. I'm not going to be a Cowan basher. I'm sorry, I'm not. I know a lot of people out there, the Leafs fans are defending him because he's their prospect and that.
I thought he
But
did okay.
I thought he led the team in points. Mind you, it was only three or four,
Still,
which is kind of, I think, the worst point total in years a Canadian leader has had.
nonetheless, I thought he
But
did fairly well considering.
I think he did okay, but I also thought he was very selfish with the puck. Like he was very,
But
like
that's his
he did.
game.
I shouldn't say that. When he had a chance to shoot, he would pass, and when he had a chance to pass, he would shoot. And I know his game is to shoot first. He's a shoot first type player, so I'm not going to take that away from him. But man, some of the like the look on Dickinson's face when he was wide open for the pat and he
Or
didn't
Bonk,
took the
Bonk,
shot. Oh,
when Bonk
Bonk
was
and
wide open.
Bonk was
Yeah.
just raised his hands in the air like what the fuck.
So,
Um, and
well, we were
the
talking
bad
about
penalties.
with the Canadians having players in the right spots. Canada built a team with like character players to fill roles. Once there were injuries and everything went to shit, all the roles were thrown out the window. So these guys had no idea what the hell they were doing.
It was like Mark Bergeron built Team Canada because he wanted good attitude in the room.
Yes, yes, and the
And I
team
don't
they
blame the
built.
players. I blame the
No,
organization and the coach.
yes,
I didn't think the
well,
coach took
yeah,
responsibility to sit the right players. He canceled three practices after losses.
yeah.
There was no accountability. Uh, he would sit a player even though he had a good game, and some player who took two bad penalties. Oh no, we're playing. You can stay, even though he had a terrible game.
Depends how well he knew him. He was playing favorites.
Oh, for sure. Like Cameron was terrible. Like it was, and the selection process was terrible. Like they even said, "Oh, well, this team called us and said this kid would be really good to fit your team, so that's why we took him."
Again, building a team in a short tournament for roles like the team they built. If this was a like a regular playoff where you have best of seven all the way through, I think this team would have done really well. But in one game playoffs, no. Like you lose that one game, and now everything you got to catch up. You don't have that sniper. Like you don't have those really top offensive players. You lose your top defenseman to a shoulder injury. Who steps up in his place? You left all the best defensemen out, all their offensive defensemen in the entire country weren't even invited, let alone
They
not
couldn't
just cut,
finish.
not invited.
They couldn't finish, and they left four finishers off the team.
And
Like, think about it.
some of those they weren't even invited. This is my thing. Like you could have a camp. They had a 3 week camp. They could have brought in 200 freaking players, but they left off the top scoring forwards and the top scoring defensemen in the entire CHL. They just left them off the tryout roster. They didn't even invite them.
I don't know what went on there. I don't know if it's like, I'm not going
Somebody's
to be a
dad paid them a
conspiracy
lot of money.
theorist. Yeah, that's what it seems like. It seems like
It
dads were
does.
like, hey, if I'll coach, but my kid's playing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'll bake the cookies, but my kid's playing.
Like, have you ever seen a team like Team Canada left off one, two, three of the top 10 picks from last season? They left them
They
off. They didn't
lost.
invite them.
They left two of the top scorers in the entire country. Missa wasn't even invited to the camp.
That's my point.
He's the top
And
scorer in the country.
he's going top 10 this year. You're
He's going
mark my
top
words.
five.
And then you got Andrew Cristal, who's on pace for well over 60 goals and well over 130
Yeah.
points. And
Not even
all
touched.
I'm picturing, yeah, I'm just picturing him on his couch with his dog taking a selfie, going, I think there's something I'm supposed to be doing
Yeah.
right now. Like the Phil Kessel.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Like the guy is probably going to break records this year in the CHL with goals
Yep.
and points. And they were like, nah, we don't need him. Yeah. It's almost like last year or the year we covered it. And not last year before. Them saying, nah, we don't need Bedard. Let's leave Bedard at home. We don't need him.
He's too young.
Yeah, too young. We
Like,
don't
what
need
the
him.
hell?
Yes, that's where Cage.
Yeah. Now, and so this one here, the McKenna, I thought he played fairly well considering his age and the way
Yeah.
the tournament was going for Canada. And I want to be very clear. At no point throughout this am I blaming any one of the players that played
No,
for Team Canada. This is not on those guys. They did their absolute best. They just were not supported properly.
they did not. I blame the organization and the coaching for not putting the right team together, and then the coaching for not making the right decisions during the games or after the games.
So the
That's who I
loss of
blame.
practices, when he cut those practices, you got guys who were brought in not to be on the power play, but now with injuries, they need to be
They're
on the
on the
power
power
play.
play.
So where's the no practice? They don't get to work on that a little bit in
Yeah,
practice. We're talking about practice, not the game. Just
you're talking about practice playoffs.
so I mean, the Chechens outplayed Canada in that game to a point, but only because of the discipline and that kind of. But they scored the goals when they needed them, and
Yep.
Canada just couldn't find that this year or last year. So hopefully they can next year.
I hear
Where
you and I are
Canada's been
getting picked
burned.
for Team Canada next year, so they're really going off the board. Pudsy's going to
Yeah,
be in nets. You and I, you'll be defensemen. They don't even know what they're going to do with me.
dartboard material. That's all we are. Dartboard material. All right, so we just solved Canada's issues. We just solved Montreal's
Yeah.
issues. Any final thoughts before we let go?
Nope. This may or may not be my last program for a while. I'm going on a little bit of a sail for the Canadian Navy down to the Antarctica. For all you conspiracy theorists, it's Canada's turn to keep people away from the ice wall. Uh, that's not what we're doing. But no, my just final words is just like enjoy the season. It can turn around in a second. 2 months ago, we all thought this was the shittiest team on earth. Quit bashing on Slavkovsky. He's 20 years old and still on pace for 50 points.
Jesus
Give
Christ.
and I believe the kid's playing hurt. Let him be since he's been on the top line. He's a point per game player.
What more do you want from him? Perfection. That's what we want.
80, 50 goals and 90 points. That's what they want.
That'd be
It's
great
like I say, he's
for
not
everybody.
missing out on expectations. He's just missing out on your expectations.
Ooh, that should be on a T-shirt.
Right.
Just carve that into the ice wall when you're down there.
I'm going to make that a shirt. I'm
All
just
right.
not making your expectations. I give it to every woman I've been with.
So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I don't have any final thoughts because Treg has taken care of mine. So again, thank you very much, and check us out on every platform you can find podcasts on. And remember, if you're talking about it, so are we.